This video is meant for people who are just beginning with this hobby. I would like to make it as interactive as possible, and it'll be a series of videos starting from how to start really modeling from scratch. I'll be taking you through this journey up to slowly advancing the levels of difficulty. Feel free to ask all your doubts and questions in the comment section so that I can add and I can help you with this in a discussion form, and I'll be adding all the videos solving all your doubts in the future. So let's begin this journey of railway modeling. What is railway modeling? At your home, you do not have much space, but you are really interested in trains. So why not reduce the size of a rail locomotive or a wagon so that it fits in your home or whatever space you have, so that you can enjoy your fascinations for trains in a reduced space. So exactly this is this hobby of railway modeling. So modeling of trains, wagons, locomotives or railway structures at a reduced scale is called railway modeling. Now this hobby is a very old hobby, and now it's slowly picking up. It is already developed in the Western world, and so slowly we Indians are taking keen interest in this hobby, as all of us, we are fascinated by trains since our childhood. But most of us, we do not know where to start from. So I'll try and make it as simple for you on how to progress on the journey of railway modeling. So starting with the concept of scales. Scales is the reduced size of the railways from this real world counterpart. For example, if I have a train here, pardon my drawing, and supposing it is 50 feet long. If I reduce the size down to, say, 12 centimeter in length from 50 feet, I would have scaled down the model so that it fits in your household. This is the concept of scaling. A bigger size object when reduced to a smaller size. So, progressing forward in the hobby of railway modeling, we have four popular scales starting with HO. HO scale is prevalent in United States and Europe, countries like Germany. It simply means 1:87 ratio. One unit of the model is equivalent to 87 units in its real life counterpart. The distance between a standard gauge railway track is around 4 feet 8.5 inch. This in HO is close to 16.5 millimeters. So this again shows you the HO scale, the spacing between the rails is 16.5 millimeters compared to the standard gauge. In simpler terms, if you take 1 feet of real world wagon in your model in HO scale, this would be approximate 6.5 millimeters. This is roughly what HO means. Now proceeding to the double O gauge. This gauge is used in United Kingdom most of the times. It's very popular in United Kingdom. This is a slightly larger scale, which is 1:76. And the rail spacing is almost the same. So if you want to model in the eras that are based out of United Kingdom, you would go for double O gauge. And if you would choose to model United States or European trains, you would go for HO, which is more common there. The bigger gauge that is prevalent in the United Kingdom is called the O gauge. And if you're very, very tight on space, you would go for the N gauge. We would be discussing more on these two gauges, but for simplicity purpose, consider HO, double O. These are the most common gauges that you would choose to model. But if you are really, really tight on space, you would go for N gauge. That is roughly 1 is to 160. And if you have a lot of space, you would go for the O gauge. O gauge, for your reference, is 4 millimeters. So that means 1 feet of the real life is equal to 4 on the model. So, to summarize, you have basically 4 options of choosing the model railways: HO, double O, N, and O gauge. The most common ones are HO and double O for Europe and OO for UK. If you're tight on space, it is N gauge. And if you have a lot of space, you would go for O gauge. Now coming on to the details. Always remember, the smaller the gauge, the lesser the details. Smaller gauge, lesser details. That means a lot of information has to be compressed onto a very small area. So you would lose out on the details. And larger the gauge, the more the details. So if you are very tight on space, say you have an area which is just 4 feet long, you would go for N gauge so that you can pack in, a lot of scenery or tracks without compromising on space. You would go for N gauge, but then you would compromise on the details. A better compromise would be to go for HO and OO. If you have okay space, like supposing 10 feet or 15 feet long, you would go for HO and OO. The details are good, and you would really enjoy, comparing the prototypes with the models you have. You would go for HO and OO. And if you have a lot of space, like 15 feet or more, you would go for O gauge. The models are big in size and they have a lot of details. So this completes the section on scales. If you have doubt, you could please put your questions in the comment section. So next, our topic of discussion, it's going to be, what do you need to start off? So you need, first of all, space at home, which we have discussed. You have chosen your scale. So now once you've decided your scale, you would need locomotives, wagons, carriages, tracks, and a control circuit. So these are the 4 basic components: locos, wagons, tracks, and control circuit. Model trains run on electricity. They run on either AC or DC, which we will come to later. So you need something to control the trains. They do not run on batteries, unlike your toys. They run on battery, but model rails, they run on electricity, which is derived either from DC current or AC current. So once you have decided on the space, you would look forward to starting your hobby as soon as possible. So before coming to that, it depends on which country do you like to model. Is it Europe, UK, US? I would suggest you scroll through Wikipedia and find out which trains you love the most, in case you have not decided now. Europe, Germany is the country where you would find the most number of models that are available in the market. So you should also keep that in mind, the availability in the market. And personally, I am into UK and Indian railway modeling, more of UK. The models, I love the trains of UK, and I also prefer UK because the availability is pretty good compared to German stores, and US is another option. So those of you who have not decided and would like to understand how to whether you like European or UK or US, I would suggest you go to Wikipedia and see it for yourself. And just type here in Google the options here. You would see a lot of wagons. For example, I want to see the brake van. You would see a lot of pictures, and you can use the Queen's Mary brake van. This is the Toad brake van. You can just search these names in YouTube and see a lot of videos, and you'll get to know whether you like UK modeling or not. So these are the conflat wagons. Wikipedia has lots of detail and historic accounts. You would surely get to know a lot of things from there. Similarly, if you want to go for British locomotives, you just search it here. You would get a lot of answers like the Class 37, which is the most famous locomotives. The steam locomotives are absolutely brilliant. You would get a lot of details from Wikipedia. For example, let's see the Class 66. This is the most powerful locomotive. So here you can see the Class 66 and you can read about it. Slowly, as you get the details, you would really understand whether this country is the country you choose to model or not. Let's see United States, USA locomotives. So locomotive companies like the EMD and Alco, they are the most famous. India has bought the technology from EMD, which is electromotive division of General Motors. You'll see all locomotives made by EMD, and I'm sure you must have seen these locomotives in a lot of movies. So if these locomotives interest you to look, for example, Union Pacific, the MP15, why not choose US? Slowly you'll get to understand which country you like to model. And if you want to see German locomotives, let's see German locomotives. So the famous crocodile. So these are one of the Switzerland, and so basically what I've seen is the German locomotives are costlier, but they are really to the mark. Getting them is a little expensive. The online stores are a little hard to find, but you can just scroll through the different locomotives and see if you really like German locomotives. These are the modern Vectron, and the most famous one is the DB locomotives. The DB Class 120 is famous German locomotive, the DB Shankar. So basically, what you need to understand is it is personal choice, a lot of research, and your own fascination about which country you would like to model. In case if you feel you're not decided yet, I would guide you. You could start off with any country. I would prefer UK because the models are widely available and lesser in price compared to the other countries. And then, if you feel you are really into this hobby, you could choose which country. Now let's talk of the subject of DCC or DC. Basically, railway model is powered or controlled by either analog or digital control. Analog is simple DC control. You increase the voltage up to 12 volts and you reduce the voltage up to minus 12 volts by changing a resistance. So if you increase the voltage to plus 12 volts, the train will go the fastest in one direction, and if you reverse the voltage to minus 12, it will go fastest in the reverse direction. Zero voltage corresponds to stop position. Advantage of DC control is the controllers are very cheap, and the disadvantage is that if your layout on the same track you have two locomotives, you increase the voltage, both the locomotives will start to move. You will not have individual control, and in order to get the individual control, the circuitry really gets complicated. A lot of isolation sections which we will deal in later subjects, but for simplicity, remember analog is cheaper, DC controllers are cheaper, but you will have less control over your layout. The modern technology is called digital control or DCC in the world of model rail. DCC in simple physics is not actual an alternating current, which is a sine wave, but a pulse width modulated signal, which is kind of this. Basically, it's binary. If you don't understand this, it's basically zeros and ones. The advantage of DCC is that each locomotive has a unique address, and you can individually control all the locomotives. Supposing you have 4 or 5 trains, each locomotive has a unique address, and using the controller, you can control them independently. This offers more flexibility over your models, and the circuitry is less complicated compared to if you want to control several trains on a DC layout. The flip side is DCC is more expensive compared to DC. Personally, I have chosen DCC. The reasons I'll tell you: it's expandable, the limits, there are no limits. No limits on what you can do with DCC. You can keep expanding your layout, you can keep adding more tracks, more trains, but your controller remains the same. Basically, you'll have the same controller. You can keep adding locomotives. You just need to program your locomotives. It's a matter of 5 minutes, but yes, your hobby will be more fun with DCC, and that is the new technology. All the locomotives you buy will have the DCC chips, control chips, which are installed in the locomotives. So before you enter the hobby, you have to make up your mind whether you have to choose DCC or DC. Depending on that, I will guide you about how to go about purchasing your first model rail. Next, coming up on the topic is how do you start your hobby once you've decided your scale, your controller DC or DCC, your country. Now it's time to move on. What trains do you buy? The main subject. What trains do you buy? So for all beginner modelers, I would suggest you buy starter train sets. Starter train sets are again DC or DCC. So again, you have decided whether to go in for the digital or the analog. The digital ones, DCC ones, are slightly expensive, but it's a one-time investment, and you will really enjoy expanding your train sets as you buy more trains, more tracks. But if you're really short on your budget, then I would suggest you go for DC and upgrade to DCC later. So now what starter trains do you select? For today, this is episode 1. I would like to start with UK because that's the path I have taken. I started with United Kingdom starter train sets, and the two famous companies that make these trains are Hornby and Bachmann. So today I will discuss about Hornby. So let's go to the best website that I have found with all these years of experience is the Model Center, TMC. Let's go to their website. This is the homepage of the Model Center, and let's start with how do you go about selecting your first train set. So I click on rail and I select double O gauge because that's what we discussed about modeling in the UK. I select train packs and sets. On the left hand side, you have pre owned and new. So, people who are a little tight on the budget, I would suggest you go for pre owned. TMC pre owned are very good in quality, and for a good discount, you would get a second hand set. And that's how even I started my hobby. And this is the exact train set which I had purchased long back. It's of Bachmann, and the other company which I told you is Hornby. So I will show you two sets. So let's start with the Hornby one first. See this Hornby double O gauge Freight Master train set. This comes to 136 pounds, which is roughly 13,000 rupees. And the best thing about any train set is you get the entire thing. You get the train consisting of the loco, the wagons, the controller. You can see the controller here. The DC, this is a DC train set, and you get a track. So this is the basic track layout, and you can keep expanding on this. I will discuss this more later. You have turnouts, you have curved, you have straights. So I'll discuss this more. So for a beginner, you could start with this. It's called this locomotive is the class 20. This is a freight train, and you would have everything, and you can start off with your hobby. And the other one which I told you is the Station Pilot made by Bachmann. The slightly expensive one. It's 190 pounds. And why it's expensive? Because you see this is DCC ready. You can fit a chip here. So the chip is not yet installed, but it is ready to be installed. So here I would like to take you back on another concept called DCC ready and DCC on board. So before you buy any train or locomotive or a train set, always be careful to check whether you're buying a DCC ready or a DCC on board locomotive or a train set, because in the DCC ready, the socket is there for you to buy the chip separately and install it. DCC onboard means the chip is already fitted. So most of the train sets, they have DCC ready. So you need to check the type of socket. Corresponding to the type of socket, you need to purchase a DCC chip. DCC onboard means you don't have to do anything. It is already pre-fitted for you. The difference is again in the price. DCC onboard is more expensive because the cost of the chip and the installation cost is added on to the train. And DCC ready is you have to do the hard work. You have to open the locomotive very carefully and install the chip. So for this locomotive, you can see the type of socket is next 18. So next 18 is the type of decoder you would be needing for this. However, there's a big however. All the DCC ready locomotives can run on DC, but not vice versa. So, all DCC ready locomotives, all DCC ready locos can run on DC. So if you buy a DCC ready loco, you save on some cost if you don't have money right now, and later you can buy a chip and it will be DCC for you. So any DCC ready can run on DC, ready to be upgraded later. So you can go ahead and purchase this without even buying a decoder, and it will run pretty fine with your normal analog controller. So now again, I'm going back and showing you another option. Select the Western Pullman. Now, if you buy this, you are getting a DCC ready, sound ready locomotive right there at the beginning without any investment. But you're paying the price is a very hefty 713 pounds. This is because you get an amazing DCC controller, and you can always hook on this controller to your computer and do further advanced things, which we will discuss again in future episodes. You get a sound ready locomotive there for you. You don't have to open it, nothing, but the price you pay is pretty high. So it's a one-time investment and it'll give you lots of fun. So this is the Bachmann Pullman sound fitted train set. So the choice is yours depending on your budget and whether you want to invest in a small DC set. I would suggest the Hornby Freightmaster train set, and if you want to go for DCC ready, you would go for the Station Pilot set. I'm stopping the video here itself. Just think about what we have discussed today. Please post your questions in the comment section, and we will continue further with further options about how to start with your railway modeling hobby. So just to summarize, we have covered today what is railway modeling, what are the scales depending on the space at home, you choose your scale, what are the components of railway modeling, what are the two different controllers, DCC and DC. DC is analog, it's cheaper, and DCC is digital, it gives you individual control. DCC is it's expensive than DC, but it'll give you more controllability over your layout in the future. And for beginners, a starter set made by Hornby or Bachmann is a great choice. Feel free to visit the model center and choose your train set. And if you have any doubts, please post your comments and questions in the comment section below. I will be more than happy to answer them in the next video. Till then, signing off. Take care. Bye-bye.